So we have just gone live, and we welcome everyone in the Proclaim community, both on Facebook and on YouTube. I'm here with two good friends, James and Brett. Brett, how are you doing today?
I'm very well, Eric. Thanks for having me on. How are you?
Great. I'm doing great. I'm here in the office, and I can see you're in the office too, Brett. And James, I see that you might be working from home today.
You just pretend I'm in the office. That's all.
Yeah, you're always in the office.
That's it.
Good.
Church never stops.
The holy images.
Yeah, I moved my desk around so that it makes it look good.
Nice.
But the quality of the work is questionable, perhaps. Yeah. So we are here to talk about something that is exciting, new, and perhaps has solicited a number of questions and an opportunity to speak to, some clarity and some, the opportunities that Proclaim has with a new tool that has come out for the Archdiocese, which is called Behold. And for those who have just been able to sign in, I can see that a few are still signing in. We're here to share a little bit of Behold and what opportunities it has, but we're also here to answer some of the questions that you might have as we've launched Behold and as you've been able to engage within the website and the new community and have seen a variety of changes that has happened around the Archdiocese. So this is our opportunity. We hope that we can spend a little bit of time to create some clarity and to create some excitement around some of the new opportunities that we have. So why don't we start first with asking James, what is Behold?
Well, this discussion started really thanks to Brett and the Archbishop about a year and a half ago. So even though it was way before the pandemic, I would say it's come at a perfect time. Behold is really a community site, a web-based site for Catholics who want to ask deeper questions. So for a lot of us, we'll talk about Proclaim and how it ties into Behold. But Behold, I think, is a great welcoming site for Catholics who are asking questions about, is there more? Is there more to being Catholic? So we'll get into it in more detail, but that's kind of a basic start.
Okay. And what's in a name? Why Behold?
Well, when it comes to naming products or websites, a lot of thought goes into it. This one we settled on with the blessing of the bishop. The word itself means to pause and to take in the majesty of something. Okay. And again, it goes to the core need of all of us as Christians or as humans to be asking these big, deep questions about the meaning of life, about happiness. And we thought Behold kind of captured that and did so in a pretty welcoming way.
Okay. So why does the Archdiocese right now need something like this?
Can I just go back to the question? We've got a little bit of time, right? We can talk about this?
Of course we can talk about it. That's what we're here for.
I want to just jump in a little bit with, Behold and this idea of gazing and everything, because when James was just talking, one of the things that came to mind was a quote. I think it was Frank Sheed, who's this kind of famous Catholic writer and thinker and all that. And he basically said that, the Catholic faith is kind of like a lion. Like, it doesn't have to sit in a cage. It just has to be let out. It just has to be seen. And that image is not one to be scary or anything, but, when you behold something that is beautiful, there's something that moves inside of you, whether it's beautiful landscape or, an animal in the wild or whatever the case may be, but there's something that stirs within you. And that's really why Behold, like, the faith is beautiful. It is something that is majestic. It is something that we can literally behold. We can gaze, and so we have nothing to fear. It's just more a way of packaging it and presenting it that is not off-putting in any way, but is very welcoming and inviting. So, it's a tremendously exciting time for the Church in Vancouver to have this as a resource, to have this as a tool in people's hands, people in Proclaim, other Catholics that are engaged. It's an incredible tool. So just some other thoughts there.
Can I add in a Frank Sheed thought?
Yeah.
Are you familiar with his tomato test? So when he came up with a new way of describing the beauty of God or the beauty of a church teaching, he would go to Trafalgar Square, he or one of his evangelists, they would literally stand on a soapbox and start sharing. And he said, if you could survive the tomatoes that were thrown your way, then that argument might have something. And so part of what we're here to do is take some tomatoes. If people are asking the question, why now, all sorts of questions about the website, that's what we're here to do. So Frank Sheed, pray for us.
Yeah.
And this is quite a big launch for the Archdiocese and for the Catholic community. And so part of our understanding is knowing that there will be questions, and there will, like I think, James, you had mentioned before, that this launch and this website and this community is almost bigger than what we can offer by way of content in the community itself. And so we're going to have to grow into it. So can you speak a little bit to some of the questions that might be around the old site versus the new, and what the new site currently offers, and perhaps some of the challenges that the old site might have had?
Sure. The rcava.org, which a lot of us have been used to for many years, really is more of what should be considered an administrative site. And it's still there. We actually have a new version of it launching this week. So that's where you'll see announcements, you'll see job and volunteer opportunities, a lot of the bishop's messages, papal documents, and those are all critical, especially for people that are really into their faith. What we wanted was to create a new platform that was more missional in nature. So kind of building on what Brett was saying, it's a new way of showing the truth, beauty, and goodness of the Catholic faith. And creating a platform like this, the whole idea of reaching people online is to draw them into an authentic encounter offline. And so we still see the heart of Behold being the parish and being the family. So we're providing a lot of good content that's linked to great events that can help us all grow in our faith. So the idea is to welcome and to help people dive deeper with the hope that they pursue God, or allow God to pursue them in an authentic way at the parish or in their home.
Okay.
Just a great thing. Eric, I'd jump in if I could. And by the way, for those of you who saw me leave the screen there, I had to plug in my laptop because I was warned that the battery's going. So that's where I was. I think it's timely in terms of like we're just beginning to come out of the pandemic, and we've got, gathered masses are being allowed and limits of 50 and all the rest of it. But one of the beautiful things that we saw during the pandemic is how quickly parishes pivoted and began to really be concerned for their parishioners. They wanted to stay engaged with them. They wanted to make sure they had live stream access. The number of parishes that went to a live stream mass was just beautiful to see. And speaking with some other people in different dioceses, I know a lot weren't able to do that, but in Vancouver, so many were. And it wasn't just live stream, it was, drive up adoration and parking lot confession, all those things. Like, it was just such a beautiful movement. And if I could summarize what was animating that, besides, of course, charity and love for the parishioners, it was a desire to keep the people engaged. It was a desire to stay connected with the ones we're trying to keep. And it was beautiful. But to really understand Behold, and James has used kind of the missional understanding, it's a completely different thinking, because Behold is not necessarily about the ones that we're trying to keep, although everybody that's involved in the church and everything will be blessed by it. But it really is beginning to look at the ones we're trying to reach. We're trying to get to a place where seekers and those who are curious, and maybe people that are parishioners but less engaged maybe than some people in Proclaim and things like that. And so to reach them, we have to go digital, and it has to be beautiful. It has to be outstanding, and it has to answer the questions that they're actually asking. One of the ways to come across irrelevant is to answer questions nobody's asking. So let's really have a shallow entry point for people to engage with the church digitally and create that environment for them. And that's really what Behold is. And that's how we have to understand it. It's a completely different paradigm. It's a completely different environment that we're trying to reach. But the other thing that was revealed to us in the pandemic is how real a digital platform and digital communication, video, articles, etc. can be. I mean, if it wasn't for that, none of us would have remained connected. So it's a very real thing. It's not secondary or second class engagement. It's very real. So just some other thoughts.
I think that's launched a number of questions, at least for me personally, and I'm going to invite our viewers, if you've got some questions that come to mind, please feel free to throw it in our chat, and we're going to try and pull them up and see if we can offer some sort of a response to allow for some clarity. But Brett, as you've mentioned, the Behold community site and all of the idea of Behold is meant to be a response to what might be stirring in people's hearts. And I think part of the structure of the website reflects that, hearing God, deeper relationships, and all of that. Could you speak a little bit, and maybe this is both to you, Brett, and to James, to the process of listening that has taken place over the last months, maybe year or so, in understanding some of the desires and perhaps the questions that people might be asking that allowed for these content pillars, if you will, to come forward and speak to the community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's not an isolated effort. There's a number of people involved and a number of questions that were asked, and small groups and getting out to people. And it's not only asking or beginning to address the questions that are asked, but it's even the way that those questions are asked, how important the language is and everything. But there have been multiple people involved in framing up both the channels, but also the categories of thought and questions and areas to explore. I mean, all those pieces. So it was a pretty robust effort behind the scenes to really come up with that. I mean, and that said is that, this is a kind of site that is organic in a sense of, we're going to be learning as we go. We're going to be growing into this. We're going to be gleaning wisdom from others who are doing, similar things. So it certainly isn't static, done, that's it, we'll push it out. It's very much, it's more organic than that.
Yeah, if I can add, I consider myself a recovering marketer. And when this whole discussion started, we had good talks about making sure we're not creating something that isn't solving a problem. And of the hundreds of people we spoke with, we had some great ones. My father is one, and he said, well, I already have my 11 Catholic sites that I check every day. Why do I need a 12th? And I said, how many people do you think are going to 11 a day? And we can laugh about it, but the reality is there wasn't a site locally that was connecting good content with opportunities for encounter, both with local Catholics, local events, local experts, local communities. So we definitely listened, and I would say to hundreds of local Catholics, including people that are not super into their faith, a group that we don't get to talk to often enough. And so as Brett was saying, in some ways, this is caring for the 99 while going out to find the one. And so we were able to enter into a dialogue with the one, with the people that, as Brett said, some of them are in our church, and maybe we don't see them much beyond the 1 hour a week. Others who maybe have drifted away from church, how do we get them back interested by meeting some of their felt needs? Things like parenting, marriage, the universal longings we all have. We want to be good husbands. We want to be good fathers. We want to be good humans. And we wanted a site that really started to provide some information to those big questions.
Okay. I think we're all familiar with a variety of different kinds of websites, and it sounds like this Behold community and website is not just a digital bulletin board that presents information and perhaps gets updated when new events come through or the calendar gets refreshed or anything like that. I think you hit it when you said it's meant to connect people from digital to online, from reading perhaps a story or an experience that is local, that allows for an invitation to something else that's local to allow us to go deeper in our faith. So I think that's a good distinction for my part, to understand that there might be elements of a bulletin board to share events and to share some calendaring and all of that, but it's also a place where there's community and where there's discussion and stories that can be shared. I think that's a big part as well. That's local. Okay. Okay. I'd love to maybe move towards a more missional conversation just for a little bit. But to our viewers, if you've got more questions about Behold, that's stirring up again, I want to encourage you to throw it up in our chat, and we will spend some time to answer some of those questions. But Behold was built with Proclaim in mind. And Brett, how does that, maybe if you could shed some light on that statement?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I can certainly shed some light on the relationship with Proclaim, and then maybe James will get ready, because it's a much broader context in terms of the Archdiocese digital presence. So, I mean, Proclaim as a movement, it's a movement of people who are already engaged. It's a movement of people who have a heart to evangelize. But the Proclaim site and the Proclaim, YouTube channel, Facebook, and all those things are designed to put legs to the hearts of people who want to move into evangelization. So it's the Proclaim presence online. It's really about training. It's about mobilizing. It's about encouraging those who are already super engaged in the faith and really want to spread that faith to others. So that's really what Proclaim is all about. Whereas again, Behold is more the shallow entry point for people. Proclaim members can look at Behold as another tool in their toolbox that we're giving to them in their ministry with people who would be, quote unquote, in the periphery. One of the big things in Proclaim is this idea of approximate periphery, that when Pope Francis talks about the periphery, it's not people in Nicaragua or, some foreign land. It's people that are far from Jesus. And we all have relationships with people who are far from him that we love. And by God's grace, we have trust in our relationship. And Behold is this incredible tool that there might be an article that, you're having a conversation, a cup of coffee with a coworker that talks about marriage or about his kids that are involved in elite sport and how it's draining the family. And there's actually articles and content on Behold that you can direct them to that is going to be very positive, inspiring, beautiful in its look, simple in its language. It's not going to come across overly Catholic or anything like that. So for Proclaim members, they really could see Behold as just that, another tool in their toolbox to be used in their own sort of ministry of evangelization.
Okay. Brett, you just reminded me of a couple of conversations I had this weekend, and I was invited to share one article on the Behold site, which I was happy to do, and I got a text message from a friend who appreciated reading the article, and just said, there was a couple of neat things that they learned from what I had shared. But I also had another friend who was a neighbor a few blocks down who happened to just pass by, and she mentioned that she also read the article and started some of the conversation. So I think those two instances for me speaks to the tool that you're speaking of, where the digital opportunity is always there to speak into concerns and things that we're living in our lives today, and that it could spark a conversation or open up an invitation that could move someone towards greater discipleship. And that's organic. That was just this weekend.
Yeah. I had an example this weekend too, where a friend. We were at this gathering together. It was less than 50. And she was sharing the same thing, that she had a conversation with her husband, actually. And there was a piece of content on Behold that animated that entire conversation that her husband was so blessed by. It helped some things that he was dealing with. And she was sharing this with me. And I was like, amen. That's exactly why we've developed it. Put it in the people's hands to use for the benefit of others. So
yeah, and I think what the combination of Proclaim as a movement, inviting disciples to consider their missionary identity, can help them see the opportunities that come about in a conversation like that. So we might have these conversations on faith, or something sparks from an article, and we're sitting around the dinner table and we're wondering, well, what's next? What's my next step? And James, you had mentioned this. Part of the I guess the overall approach to Behold is to also help answer some of those questions, like the what's next. So as an example, if someone has read an article on prayer, and they began to ask the questions like, wow, that's, around like, what does it mean in this article? We want to be able to offer workshops, events, or gather, some sort of a teaching or some sort of a what's next to accompany these individuals in their questions and in their desire for discipleship.
That's exactly it. And I think as a faith, we sometimes quickly default to the intellectual and the theological, even the liturgical, and all of those are beautiful. But the fourth leg of that chair is really the human part. And we need to make sure that we're creating tools and creating opportunities for encounter that are entirely human. And Brett and I have had this talk. In my life, my non-Catholic friends rarely speak Latin. They don't understand it. And so when we think about some of the places we send non-Catholics to understand our faith better, we can see how it would appear to be both foreign and irrelevant. And as beautiful as Mass is, there are some Masses where I would send non-Catholics in a heartbeat. But a lot of them have basic questions about marriage and about family. I had a friend recently tell me that they work with a crazy Christian, and I referred them to Behold, not knowing that there's an article on there that's saying, "Are you the crazy Christian in your office?" that Colleen Little wrote. But it's trying to address a lot of the questions that those sharing their faith are encountering. It's also a bridge to faith and culture. So as an example, you see articles about Kobe Bryant being Catholic, and other people that have a lot of what the world is offering, but still know there's something more out there. So I think you've both nailed it as far as the language and the opportunity for it.
Great.
Maybe if I could, Eric, just to jump in with a bit of a metaphor, and this is, right out of the gospel. And the greatest evangelizer that many of us are familiar with is St. Paul, but of course before him is Jesus himself. And he spoke about us and our ministry in this world is to be salt and to be light. And there's something really important, I think, in the metaphor, because both with salt and light, like a little bit of salt given to somebody actually makes them thirsty and crave more. They crave water. And a little bit of light is attractive, right? But the opposite end is also true. Like too much salt, and there's actually a gag reflex that human beings have. And too much light is blinding, and you actually turn away from the source. And that's exactly what we don't want to see happen. We want to have a little bit of salt and a little bit of light that makes them thirsty and want to come back for more. We do not have to jump to a summary of the Summa in the first conversation that we have with somebody. In fact, it's better that we don't, because what we're after is the end in mind is full relationship with the Lord Jesus, fully incorporated into the church, and evangelizing others. But there is a sequential development to this, right? Even the Apostle Paul, it took years of mentoring and all the rest of it. So Behold is that shallow entry point. It's starting conversations. It's a little bit of positive Catholic thinking and ideas interacting with the actual questions they're asking or contemporary culture. So it's a little bit of salt, a little bit of light to draw people in even further.
That's a great metaphor, Brett. Thanks so much. And I think that perhaps is answering some of the questions that I've seen come up, which includes, the visuals of the website as perhaps not looking as Catholic as it could look in the way it's currently presented. I'm going to throw this up here. Just a little comment from Ray. He said, "I like the potential of Behold helping proclaim hosts and leaders to answer the questions that arise from Alpha and Discovery guests." And I know Ray, he's from Our Lady of the Assumption, and they moved their Alpha from face-to-face to online. And so I think his comment also has a context of moving from face-to-face to online, and then from online back to face-to-face or perhaps from a concern that might come as a result of questions in Alpha, moving to something that's quite personal, which I think is exactly what Behold is looking to accomplish. So thanks, Ray, for adding that comment. And if there's any other questions, feel free to add them to the chat bars, and I'll try to pull them up and begin to ask some questions. So I'm going to ask a couple questions if you don't mind. Let's go with cost. I've seen that come up a few times in a variety of conversations. It looks great. The design looks beautiful. It feels premium. And some of the questions that did come up were, is this the right thing to be and the right time to be spending, money on, and how? Yeah.
Yeah, great question. I guess, first of all, while we were discerning this, we had several donors step forward. So I don't want to back down from the idea that some things are worth the investment. In this case, we did not have to use our operating budgets at all. So the entire Behold project is funded by donors who felt called to provide funds needed to reach people more effectively online. So that's first and foremost. The truth is, we thank those donors for feeling called and for God sending them our way. The other side of this, which is entirely practical, I had one really nice, passionate lady online who said, we should be focusing at this time on things like feeding the poor. And I thought it was a beautiful expression of her heart. And I was so excited to tell her that through Behold and through our other online activities, we're seeing record-breaking donations to the Doors Open and the men's shelter. And those donations in great part would not have come in if it wasn't for creating awareness and sharing our message online. So I think it can be a both and. For these particular donors, they felt like, especially for our generation, Brett, and then the younger generation like Eric and his peers, even down to our children's age, in Brett's case, a grandchild's age, if we're not relevant online, in the last 10 years, we've gone from being a society that would not buy something unless they saw it in person to a society that will not buy something unless they research it online first. And we need to become more and more present and more effective online. So as much as some of these things can cost, A, we're blessed with donors to cover them. And B, we think people that are spending time online are worth reaching. So I could definitely defend the investment. Brett, how about you?
No, absolutely. I mean, it's certainly one of the ways that God shows and confirms what he wants to see happen when the actual money is there. And it's there very quickly. And with the appropriate blessing and encouragement and everything else. So, I mean, the donors that are surrounding this certainly want to see it be all that it can be. And that involves a certain level of quality and commitment to excellence and all the rest of it, which is very fitting, I think, of the gospel and the souls of people that we're trying to reach. So it's definitely worth the investment. Absolutely.
If I can add, this goes to your earlier point, Brett. I was on a call with faith leaders around Vancouver and the mayor of Vancouver on Friday. And as we were sharing some of what our parishes have accomplished, New World pivoting to online offerings, Old World actually picking up the phone and calling, in some cases, every parishioner every 2 weeks. The mayor actually stopped the meeting and said how impressed he was and how beautiful that was, that there are churches that are trying to do both. That we're not saying abandon all the things we've been doing for 2,000 years. We're saying take this new tool in order to help serve our communities. And he actually circulated the notes from that. And we had other faith leaders on the call who said they see other churches doing these things. And some parishes might have had to invest thousands of dollars to be able to share the heart of the liturgy online. But I think their communities are very appreciative that they've done so.
It's interesting, James, when you're talking about that, because I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've been deeply moved by hearing the stories of what is taking place in parishes and pastors and leaders in the parishes, pastoral councils, all of them. And to me, it's almost just evidence that the church is ready for something like what we're talking about with Behold. There is so much love animating the efforts that a tool like Behold in the hands and hearts of people who really love those that they're trying to serve is just such a powerful opportunity. So many things I think have been confirmed. It just feels like it's the right time even. And who would have known that when we started working on this? Nobody knew COVID was going to hit. Nobody knew 2020 was going to be what 2020 is. So it's really neat to see.
It really is. My wife is on one of these calling trees, and she said so many times, people almost embarrassingly said, I know you've got my number. I know you're on my list, but I haven't been to church in years. And to think of the beauty that can come from connecting with someone, and to know that there's online communities, there's real communities that care deeply about these people. They're not just phone numbers, they're not just donors, they're not numbers, that our job is to reach out in any way we can and introduce them to a loving God and a loving community. And I feel like Behold is part of that new sense of outreach that we're all feeling strongly locally.
Okay. A question about local parishes and the community within parishes. How would local events interact with Behold? And I'm not speaking to local in Vancouver. I'm speaking more of like, the event at Our Lady of the Assumption or Christ the Redeemer. How does that connect with Behold?
Yeah, practically speaking, just like parishes now can promote their events through our communications team, the same pathway will result in those events being featured on Behold, and still some of them on rcab.org. Okay. So one team will now have extra communities or extra opportunities to share. And that's exactly, as we talked about earlier, that's the goal, is that if you're reading this and you're blessed enough to live in Surrey, as an example, it'll naturally funnel you to opportunities to meet people or go to events in your area. And a lot of what parishes have told us is that they become quite insular. So you might have a parish event that would draw 14 people, and we want the 8 closest parishes to have the opportunity to share that event with their people. And so Behold, we've built a lot of systems into it that can support that kind of geographic focus. So whether it's because it's a topic that you're interested in or a neighborhood that you find yourself in, Behold and the teams behind it are trying to connect their questions with opportunities to encounter.
Okay, so local communities and parishes, as they begin to look forward to new events and what the new normal might look like in ministry, Behold could be a place where those events could be housed, and not just so that it could be promoted, but as so that it could in fact serve the people within their local communities, and can be a stepping stone for an individual who might be reading an article or watching a video or watching something or seeing a conversation happen online, and then could be tied to the particular event that a local parish might be offering. Okay.
That's exactly it. And beyond the parish side, if you've got a parish youth group, or you've got a movement, Couples for Christ, Youth for Christ, it's not about the diocese and parishes. It's about promoting opportunities to encounter, again, God and the community. So if you're a part of any groups like that and you want to get word out, please reach out to us, and we'd love to feature your stories.
Okay. A couple questions around content. I think as the website is launched, certainly there's been some content that's been populated, but I think the aim is to have more content. And where's that going to come from? And how do we continue to grow content that's meaningful and also expresses the variety of Catholic experiences?
Another great question. You two are contributing, so you're 2 of my favorite authors on Behold. I think we have more than 40 so far, and we would encourage anyone out there that feels called, and not just written articles, but also video. If you're a photographer, or if you're a creative artist, more and more to get content, both local and from other places. But yeah, if there's anything you can bring to us, we would love to review it. We also want to really build up a team of ambassadors in each community. So if you're at a parish and you want to know more about what we're up to, and you feel like you could share our message and these events, then please reach out to us.
The other thing I would suggest too is that even if you're not thinking of an article or a video yourself, but you have a concept or an idea or an area that should be explored, but maybe somebody who's a little bit more gifted in writing or communicating, then share that as well. So it just speaks to that kind of organic thing. Again, we want to be answering and addressing questions people are asking and topics that are top of mind and relevant. So any help we can get. There's a saying that says no one of us is as smart as all of us. So everybody can contribute in some way, either to an article itself or video or even a concept or an idea. Happy to receive it.
Okay. Got a comment from someone that's requesting more bad joke videos with Clay and the Archbishop. So you've already got your first request.
Clay has no shortage of bad jokes. I'm sure he's ready for the sequel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I'm a sports fan, and because The Last Dance on Netflix just wrapped up for me in watching, what comes to mind with Behold, I guess, in relation to sports, is there was a part where I guess the Chicago Bulls was speaking on how the coach wanted to introduce a new offense, and how it took a lot of time for the team not only to understand the offense, but then to implement it and to play within it and to understand their role and to then become creative within the new structure. And that's coming to mind for me right now as I'm listening to each of you speak on Behold, that this, in a certain sense, has a little bit of a different strategy and a different way in which we can celebrate our Catholicism and celebrate the lives of disciples as they draw closer to Jesus. But it's a little bit different. It's not part of our normative culture and experience within our parish communities. And so I think it sounds like for us, there's going to be a little bit of time for us to understand the strategy or the way in which it can be a tool, and that the creativeness and the innovation can come the more we understand how Behold is meant to be that tool. So I'm just kind of speaking out loud, and maybe this is the invitation for all of us to give it some time to play in it, to read, to see how it could fit, because I know you, James, and I know you, Brett, and I know that the intention behind the entire Behold team has been to invite people into greater and deeper relationship with God. Yeah,
that's well put. And again, I can nerd out and talk about Nike and Armani and other brands that do great things online. But the truth is, our brothers and sisters in the evangelical world are way ahead of us in this area, along with a lot of our charities. So we're not doing anything new in the sense of strategy here. What we're trying to do is effectively share. We've learned from a lot of other great faith-based groups. We knew that we needed to take our digital game up a big level. And I like how you summarized it. I think Behold is another tool for the faithful to use. It's not going to be for everyone. So someone might go to the site and say, I knew all of this already, or this isn't relevant for me. Again, we welcome thinking about the 99 and the 1, and knowing that there might be someone in your life that this site is well suited for, well designed for.
Okay, very good.
I think, again, I'll just reiterate, because repetition is our friend when something is being launched new. But, you know, the church, we know, is the only organization in the world that exists not for its own members. And to really understand what Behold is to understand the 99. It's to understand that it's the ones we're trying to reach. And even in terms of, you know, we as Catholics, we're not always comfortable in having that mindset. And Eric, you and I, I'm sure, have talked about this analogy as well, but I'll share it for the Proclaim members that are listening. But, you know, when we get, typically as Catholics, when we get more serious and intentional about sharing our faith, we go through 3 stages. And the first stage that we go through is one that is very much focused on ourselves. We start to think, if I'm serious about spreading the faith and sharing my faith with people at my office or in my family, what are they going to think of me? What am I going to say? You know, we're kind of confronted with our own limiting beliefs, our own hesitations, fears, anxieties, all those things. But when you get past that and you see that it's very natural and comfortable and no problem, then you can get into the second stage, which is all about focusing on the message. You know, and it's like starting off with, you know, you need to read this particular chapter in the Bible because it says something about ABC that you're dealing with, or, you know, there's some message that we're trying to promote. And that often doesn't go well because it's not the message itself. The real test is the cultivation of the soil in which that message is coming. You know, is the soil ready to receive that seed that you want to give? And then that's the third phase, which is really just focusing on the other person and where they're at and what they're actually talking about, what is important to them. And when we have that mindset and then we're given a tool like Behold, it just becomes this incredible opportunity to be a blessing in, you know, in other people's lives. And yeah, it's just so important to understand what Behold really is about. Otherwise, we're going to be, using a microwave to shovel our driveway. Like, it just doesn't make sense. So it has to be a tool understood in the right way, and it's reaching those people who are outside of the church but are seeking.
Yeah, Eric and I are from Vancouver. What do you mean shovel your driveway?
I showed my Saskatchewan roots there, didn't I? Heated driveways and all that.
Yeah, I'm going to try it with a microwave, actually. That sounds like a Western innovation.
Exactly.
There you go. I'm mindful of our time, and what I'd love to ask each of you would be a word of encouragement for our Proclaim members. If there's something that you could offer as a word of encouragement, what would you like to say to our Proclaim movement?
You want me to go first, James?
Sure.
I guess what I would say is, the pandemic, there was a lot of disruption. There's no doubt. I think a lot of us felt it most in how we participated, obviously, in the Mass, because we weren't able to participate. We can only, engage by live stream. And some of us have had the good fortune of already getting back to Mass. Maybe others are still waiting or whatever. It depends on your parish. But I just really believe deep down in my heart that the most important disruption was what the pandemic did in terms of the missionary dimension, and to really see how important and how powerful a digital expression of the faith can be. It has, I think, created for many of us opportunities that we didn't think actually existed, or we didn't think they could be that powerful and effective, and they are. And so now, as we're getting back into some degree of normalcy, which could be months, I know, but to realize that this digital tool that we have can accompany us in our missionary efforts. This is no time for hesitation. This is a time to be bold and strong and intentional in our efforts to reach out to the periphery. And now you've been given another tool to do that. So I say, God bless you in your ministry. And I just absolutely look forward to seeing the fruit coming from the new platform.
Yeah, I would echo that. I'm a cradled Catholic and really only recently became fully evangelized. Not fully, maybe none of us are ever fully. But I would say that, Brett, you're exactly right. And that the people who drew me into it actually met my human needs before they met my spiritual needs. So they were there to give great advice about marriage and about parenting. And behold, again, seen as another tool in the context of many is a great starting point. So it wasn't a deep theological argument that drew me deeper. It was seeing this joy and peace in the two of you in particular, and in your marriages, each to separate women, just to be clear. But it was seeing fully alive people living out their faith in a way that I hadn't understood. And when I read a lot of the articles, including by the ones you two have written, there is a humanity to them. There's a joy to them that I think disciples should be really excited to share, because it might seem not as lofty or not as directly tied to the gospel, but it's precisely what our broken world is lacking. And when they see happy marriages and happy parents giving the kind of advice we find on Behold, it's a real eye-opener for a lot of us that aren't quite sure if it's all real, or if it's exactly what people like you are telling us. So I'm very encouraged by what we're hearing so far about Behold and about how it can serve the Proclaim community in particular.
Wonderful. Thank you, Brett, and thank you, James, for those words of encouragement. I'm so encouraged by what Behold can be for our church in Vancouver and for those who are seeking, particularly for our Proclaim members, as you continue to go on to mission and to find new ways to share Jesus with others. I'm just reminded of a couple of the parishes that have taken Alpha online, or have taken the faith studies online, have taken any particular ministry online, or found new and creative ways to share Jesus. And I think you've been shining examples of responding to the signs of the times out of a great love and charity for those who you care about, but also out of a great love for Jesus. And so as we continue to understand and engage in the Behold community, our invitation to all of you would be to continue to let the Holy Spirit inspire your creativeness and your innovation to reach out to others, and to allow for this tool to be part of your, your tool belt in sharing Jesus with others. And for those who are going to be listening to this later, and perhaps some of you right now who are thinking and listening, and you might have questions that might come a little bit later, feel free to add them in our Facebook group or in our chat, wherever you're watching, whether it's on YouTube or Facebook, because we really do want Behold to be a tool that is useful for you. And so if you have some questions or concerns or thoughts or any places where you're looking for clarity on how to use Behold as a tool, or you've got even some better ideas that could improve the tool, please let us know in the chat, or contact me, or if you've got James or Brett as contacts, please reach out to them and let them know, because we really do want this to be a tool that can allow for all of us missionary disciples to go out and to proclaim Jesus. So I think we'll wrap it up there. And I want to thank you again, James. Thank you, Brett, for taking the time to speak to the Proclaim movement and to the community. And for everyone who's been able to join with us, thank you so much for spending the time with us. For those who are listening later, we appreciate all of your commitments in the mission and for sharing Jesus with others. Let's continue in the mission of proclaiming Jesus to our friends, to our family, and to the world. So why don't we wrap it up there? So
thank you, Eric.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great evening.